Welcome back to Burn the Haystack with Josh and Jesse.
Podcast all about faith, culture, and memes.
And look at us. We are at episode number 4.
Episode number 4. To all the haters who said that we wouldn't get past episode 3, well, you didn't say that. We haven't had any haters so far. But if there are, we've proven you wrong.
Take that.
Take that.
Your next number 5 haters. And we're growing as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. You guys, some of you guys have been really giving us some great feedback. Just want to remind you, if you'd like to share this on social media and drop us a review, those are like the 2 big things that you can do to help out the podcast. Number 1, share on social media if you found our content interesting. If you don't find our content interesting or helpful, don't. But if you do, and you think that somebody else could be helped or could be, influenced by it, do it. And then number 2, write a review on your podcasting app of choice. Those are super helpful.
Yeah. And actually, to add to this even, I got a report of a friend who was and a listener of the show, and he was actually sharing a conversation about our one of our podcasts. I think it was episode number 2, and he was sharing about that in his like small group discussion in his Sabbath school class.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is so cool that this is actually helping people.
Super honoured.
Yeah, and I've gotten messages from people as well saying how helpful some of this content is that we're talking about. So it's really awesome to hear that this is actually making a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And this is our first episode we've ever recorded with 2 microphones.
Yes. This has been like Josh is a musician. I'm just a nerd, but we are both like super like keen on good audio. For those of you who know anything about audio engineering, you know that, or filmmaking, you know that audio is like even more important than actual video when it comes to making good content. So I am so happy. The saga though to get this second mic for Josh has just been ridiculous.
Peter Jackson's going to make it into a movie, I can guarantee. It'll be a trilogy, an epic trilogy about Josh and Jesse versus customs.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't even anything like I don't know. It's just this weird. Anyway, we talked about that. We've moved past it.
Yeah,
I've forgiven them.
We have 2 mics now. It's going to sound super good, and we're super happy about it.
Yeah, and they're the same microphone too. They're like brothers.
Yeah,
maybe cousins.
Could be.
Yeah, could be from the same factory, same line.
Thank you, Rode. This video is sponsored by Rode. Nah, jokes.
But Rode, if you want to sponsor us, we're
that'd be great.
All in for that.
We'll plug your stuff. We'll tell people that your microphones are the best in the world, even though we're not even using like the best microphones that we could be using.
It's definitely the best microphone I've ever had. So
it's the best one in my budget.
I love it. It's awesome. Hey, so today we got I reckon it's a pretty interesting topic.
Yeah.
A very interesting. You hear a lot of opinions about this too.
Yeah.
You definitely can hear the average argument about it all the time, and it pops up even on mainstream news quite often.
Every time, and this is a really sad fact, but almost every time there is a school shooting in the US, inevitably there will be a news article about if the person watched violent movies or played violent video games. Call of Duty taught such and such to shoot people. And it's so sad, but it just comes up constantly.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Yep. I made a joke on somebody's thing. Well, if that was the case, then I should be a billionaire because I've played Monopoly. So. No, it's a cheesy argument. It's a joke, guys. It's just for fun. But
so we are talking about video games. And as for those of you who know us, we are pastors. So that instantly should be like a warning bell sound. Pastors playing video games? What is this? But it's tough because we're pastors, but we're also, I'm 25, Josh is 26. So
I'm so old.
I know. So like we are, as people say, young people. So like we've grown up with this culture, or rather we've grown up amidst the huge shift in video game culture. I remember when I was a kid, I always thought, or I was always portrayed in movies and TV shows that video games are sort of like a nerd culture, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons,
Yes.
a bunch of nerds gathering around computers or a video game console playing, these 8-bit games.
Guys, look at my +1 mate. I use it to defeat the orcs.
That's honestly like the cliche video game thing.
Yep, that's so true. It's so true.
But yeah, I grew up with. I don't know when you first started playing games, but I definitely grew up with them. I think it was, I don't know, one of my like 5th, 6th birthday. Some people might be absolutely appalled by this, but I got a Nintendo 64.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good console, man.
It was, and I got Super Mario 64, and man, I loved it, But it was, it was really fun. So I've honestly, like, they've kind of been around.
I remember. I think the first time I was actually exposed to video games, somebody gave me an old PC that they were throwing out.
Right.
It ran Windows 95. And,
Windows 95.
Yeah, man. So this is obviously post 95. This is maybe. I was born in 92, 95, so I may have been 6 or 7 at the time, maybe. But I do remember that it ran Age of Empires, what was it called? It was like the demo version. So
The one from the Nutri-Grain cereal
could have
box.
been.
Yeah,
Could
that's how
have
I got my
been.
first Age of Empires.
It was like Egyptians versus Hittites or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just played that demo over and over and over again. It was so awesome.
Yep.
And then I remember playing AoE 2 and my mind was just blown. It was so good. I still remember like the music and the flavor, like the Frederick Barbarossa campaign. And
Oh my gosh.
that was probably, honestly, like, this is not sort of part of the show notes, but honestly, that's sort of where my love of history came from, really, is some of
Really?
those early video games. Because they portrayed history in a way, like we talked about this sort of with Mitch last week.
Yes,
How
true.
video games and media actually portray history in a really exciting way. It was a lot better than reading some of my history textbooks anyway.
Oh, bro, yeah. I never read those. Yeah, I actually learnt even when I was, I think when I was about 10, I started playing Dynasty Warriors with my friends.
Wow.
Moose Hour games, I think they're, yeah. And that's how I learnt a lot about Chinese history. Yeah, because that game is all based on just pure Chinese, like the dynasties of China.
Interesting.
So me and my friends used to play, and I remember I didn't actually realize I knew so much about Chinese history until I walked into it was like a, like you have it was like a kung fu lesson.
Yeah.
Someone took me along, and I walked in and there was this massive statue of Guan Yu, who was a player, like this awesome character you could play in that game. And I was like, whoa, that's Guan Yu. And the sensei was just like, how do you know who Guan Yu is? I'm like, from Dynasty Warriors. He's like, what's that? I'm like, it's a video game. He's like, wow, he developed this kung fu, and started telling me, and I was
So
like,
here's an actual historical figure.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Him and his, like, I think there were 3 brothers, and they were, these amazing, and they developed, like, Guan Yu
Never
was
played
this-
Dynasty Warriors. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then they brought out another game, Samurai Warriors, which
Oh,
was, part of feudal Japan. So it was amazing actually learning all that history, and I
Wow.
still love it today. Then I look up some things about the dynasties, and some of
Hey.
the war tactics and everything they used were amazing. So, yeah.
So anyway, the question that we're asking today, which is a question that I've gotten a lot, is playing video games okay if you're a Christian? Now, for those of our podcast audience who are not Christians, this might not be the most applicable conversation, but
Yeah.
it is applicable in the sense of discerning what media to consume and what media not to consume. Is that sort of where you're gonna?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think anybody can really benefit from this because, I mean, it's always important to examine yourself and examine your hobbies, are they actually leading me to where I want to go?
Yeah.
Examining your time. So, I mean, we're going to be unpacking a little bit about that. So I would say it's interesting. Like, I mean, maybe the stuff about the spiritual stuff that we're going to bring up, maybe that's not interesting to a non-believer, I guess, or a non-Christian. But
So I suppose really the big question is a question of alignment. Like if you want to align yourself with a certain goal or a certain direction, are the things that you consume, i.e. media such as video games, film, TV, all that sort of stuff, are they assisting you or are they blocking you from reaching the destination that you want to be aligned toward, perhaps is another way of putting this. So the reality is, for those of you who grew up in a Christian home or a Christian culture, video games are one of those real grey areas.
Oh yeah.
Such as the same as TV, same as film, all that sort of stuff. Josh and I never really experienced it much, but when my parents were younger, it was really probably not socially accepted to watch TV or especially certain movies if you were a Christian. The old joke goes that people used to actually literally say things like, if you go to the movie theaters, the angels will be waiting outside. Like, the angels won't actually sully themselves with coming into a movie theater with you, which is, I've never heard that personally, thank God, but I've heard that people have said that.
Let's just say it's not great theology.
No, it
We're
doesn't
talking about an
really hold up.
omnipresent God
Who's
omnipresent, all present.
blocked by Star Wars or Nightmare at Elm Street or something like that.
Okay, maybe Nightmare at Elm Street.
Maybe. I don't like scary movies. They
No,
scare
me neither. Oh man, thank goodness. Yeah. I
Yeah.
get judged sometimes for saying I don't like horror movies.
I personally don't get the appeal, but I guess the way that it's been described to me, people like to be scared, but I don't know. I like my mental health more than that.
I went and did a week of worship at a high school, and there was I mentioned in one of my sermons that I was there. So a week of prayer, I go and preach every day at a high school and help the kids to understand themselves, understand you. It's really fun. I love doing them. Anyway, but this one time I mentioned that I don't like horror movies. It's like, we're totally off course right now. But then afterwards, I think she was 14 or 15-year-old girl came up and just started like relentlessly teasing me for not liking horror movies. And I'm like, what? You're 14? How? And then just started listing all these horror movies she loves. I'm sure she was just doing it to be edgy, but I was like, man, like,
Yeah.
I can't even watch them now, let alone when I was 14. I would have been a mess.
I don't get nightmares per se, but like when you're going to bed at night and then you have like a story in your head, like when I have a story in my head,
Fully.
and it's like, yeah, can't do it. Anyway, so the question is video games. And really, this could probably relate to a lot of media, and we'll kind of talk about that. There's a really, I don't know about you, Josh, but growing up, the attitude has definitely shifted from the early 90s to today. Like we've alluded to that fact, and for those of you who kind of understand media, you will be able to attest to this. Today, video games are enjoyed by a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
Not just nerds.
There's been a couple of sort of historical events, I suppose, like recent history that have actually really propelled video games into the mainstream spotlight. Two of the key ones I can think of are, like obviously there were consoles, but then we had the Nintendo Wii, which really propelled, there was like over 100 million of them sold, and they were just in everybody's house. Like grandmas were buying them and that sort of thing. Like almost everybody had a Nintendo Wii, except me, who's a Nintendo fan, funnily enough. I never owned one. But even my now wife had one, so everybody had one. And that was sort of the first time video games just went everywhere. And also I think the PlayStation 2, because it was also a DVD player, and they were cheaper than DVD players. But
when, to a lesser extent, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, after the war between HD DVD and Blu-ray, the big thing was that PS4 and also Warner Brothers, so Sony and Warner Brothers signed on with Blu-ray.
Right. And
that was what killed HD DVD. For those of you who even remember that format, it was the next gen of, film and TV formats. And that was,
Interesting. And then one of the second major events was mobile phones, like smartphones.
Yeah.
So now, you can have pretty much a pretty complex gaming machine
Absolutely.
anywhere with you. And so now more people are playing video games, whether it's Sudoku or Clash of Clans or
Candy Crush.
whatever on your phone.
Yeah, Angry Birds. The interesting thing as well, one of the most widespread games at the recording of this podcast is Fortnite Battle Royale, which is really interesting because Fortnite started as a horde mode co-op game where you and a band of friends come in and defend a horde mode type game.
Zombies or something,
Yeah, sort of like zombies, like Left 4 Dead or like Call of Duty Zombies, there was a free battle royale aspect to the game, which is 100-player 1v1, last person standing wins sort of thing. Free. That has now become one of the most popular online games. It's like even eclipsed PUBG in terms of its popularity. Now they've just in the last couple of days released, or I don't know if they've released, announced a mobile version, which actually is cross-platform. So you could be playing against a PC opponent on your iPhone or your iPad.
Yeah. To our listeners who aren't gamers, I mean, honestly, this is revolutionary that a game on your phone is compatible with a game on someone's high-end gaming PC. Like it's just, I don't think this has really happened before, but never to this degree.
Not to this degree. I mean, we've seen this in mobile card games like Hearthstone, Elder Scrolls Legends, but they are a lot smaller by comparison in terms of the actual engine that's driving it.
I have no idea how Fortnite's going to run on a phone, and I'm really interested just to see, because it doesn't look like a game that could run on. Anyway.
No, but what the interesting thing about it, which is why it's significant, is we see that the casual, so that the mobile market has often been seen as being quite a casual market.
Yep.
Your Candy Crush, Angry Bird crowd, right? The Fortnite market, because Fortnite is such a popular game, not everybody likes to play battle royale games, fine. But the blending of the two mediums together, I think, is an indication of where we're going as far as consuming technology. The blending between, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. If you're a video game developer and you want people to consume your content, you better make sure that it's on all these different platforms to the point where if you're playing on PS4, PC, or your iPhone, I think in the future it's not going to matter what platform you are.
It's all blurred.
It's all going to be blurred.
All the lines are blurred. So
that's where we're going.
The reason we bring this up is because it's kind of, video games are just more popular now than ever before. Like everybody is playing video games. Almost everybody has some sort of game on their phone, whether it's, Sudoku, Candy Crush, or, soon to be Fortnite.
Even my mum, who used to tell me, stop playing those video games, they're they're rotting your brain growing up. Even she is now playing video games on her iPhone. So,
really? Oh
yeah. It's the simple stuff, but she's doing it.
Yeah, she's a gamer.
She's a gamer.
Video gamer mums, bro. And I'm sure almost all of our listeners will have played some sort of game on your smartphone. It's huge. And now I suppose we enter into a really interesting dynamic. And, whenever you hear video games talked about by, often in Christian circles, like a pastor saying, should you play? It's always this like hard no. And they have this very strict picture of video games, like the whole the 90s, 80s, sitting in a dungeon playing.
It's either you're playing with demonic things.
Yep.
That was like that. Like, so Josh and I have also played another a physical card game called Magic the Gathering, which my parents really balked at early on as well, simply because magic is in the title, and magic is equated with witchcraft, which is equated with Satanism, even though they couldn't be further apart than that. I mean, it's sort of association. But I remember in the 90s watching documentaries about people like pastors bringing out all the satanic references in Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Even Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, these sorts of really quite childish things. The idea is, I guess, has been in the past that dabbling in these sorts of things will lead you down a pathway which will, I guess, force you to end up in something satanic.
Yeah.
But I've yet to meet anybody who actually, like, that's their story. I've not met a single person who actually, like I was talking to somebody quite some time ago who was really concerned when I was playing Pokemon Go. Does anybody remember Pokemon Go?
Whoa, yeah, man.
The old craze. They were really concerned because they genuinely believed that me, their pastor, playing Pokemon Go was actually leading the teens of our church down a pathway that could end up in Satanism, in, all that sort of stuff. And I was just like, honestly, I've played played the old Pokemon games when I was a kid on Game Boy Color. I think it was Pokemon Crystal or something like that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I love Jesus still, even though I played those games as a kid. B, I've got no proclivity towards anything that's actually satanic. Like, I actually believe, like, for those of you who aren't Christian, you might find this a little bit unbelievable, but I actually do believe in a spiritual world. I do actually believe that there is a potentially evil, demonic side to life, and that's a reality that I believe in.
Yeah.
And I don't feel a pull towards that at all. At all. Like, and I never have.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I don't know. It's all very, very much subjective.
It's a fascinating topic, and I think now that it's becoming more and more mainstream, it's something that needs to be readdressed. But I think from an angle where it's, you know, people who actually have a lot of experience with video games, both previously and currently, I think it's a conversation I'd like to have. So, I mean, first and foremost, before we go into this, I do want to mention that this will probably be a bit biased because both Jesse and I have grown up playing video games. And so, I mean, take that as you will. But we honestly did a lot of research into this. I watched videos for and against, read things for and against, and I've, you know, heard a lot during my past. So I tried to approach this with the most balanced mind, but we both still have to recognize that this is a bit biased. But one really interesting video I watched was by Pastor Mark Driscoll. So we're just going to ignore some of the controversy around him. Anyway, and I honestly haven't watched a lot of Mark Driscoll's stuff, to be honest. I know some of our listeners will probably love him, some probably hate him. But anyway, it's a good teaching. The video. I guess we'll put a link up somewhere.
Yeah, we'll link to his video for what it's worth.
Yep.
We will kind of build on his ideas. But if you want to hear the ideas just in their full capacity as he says them, you can watch the video.
Yeah. And he actually has this principle, which I have heard before, which is basically whenever it's Christians engaging with culture, he has this sort of threefold principle. You can either receive it, reject it, or redeem it. So
it's a nice bit of alliteration there, the old pastoral alliteration.
The 3 R's of cultural engagement. I love it. I can see it right now. But it is actually really good. So receive, so he talks about art or, music that we use in worship. Like our hymns were received from a cultural background, and even modern songs. There's, it's receiving things and using them for God's glory. Rejecting things, think illicit drugs, pornography, inappropriate media, things that are just, there is no benefit. Reject. This is where I think video games have fallen in a lot, is into the rejected category.
Yep, it's just a blanket statement.
Yep, just no, get out.
It's almost like video games are like the new movies. You know how people used to think about movies and TV? I remember growing up, I used to get told a lot that the television was the devil's diary.
Right.
You know? I think that's sort of like video games are now the new devil's diary in a way. in some senses. Like, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush because obviously that's super unhelpful, and that's why we're in this situation. But that is sort of how it has come about.
Yeah. And then his third category is redeem, which is film, music, art, literature, and he puts video games into this. So it's something that it's not necessarily good or bad. You have to kind of see it as neutral and make your mind up on it, and you have to choose parts of it even to ignore and parts of it to bring in and even redeem in a way to make it something useful.
And the interesting thing about these three categories is they are categories, but I see the same types of media existing in all three categories.
Yeah.
Which means, to me, we cannot just chuck things in a single category and leave it at that.
Absolutely.
Right? We have to use discernment, which is something that you get taught a lot as a teenager. It's like, use discernment with your friends, use discernment with, girlfriends and boyfriends, with what movies you watch. But it's actually true. And we know this as adults, right? You actually have to be discerning. So there is certain art that is probably really unhelpful as a Christian or just as a person.
Yeah.
There's also music that's super unhelpful, literature. But at the same time, there is also art, music, literature, video games, illicit drugs, not jokes, who are that. Sorry, I don't want to destroy my whole argument. That are like really super helpful in terms of helping you, and it's not just like a blanket. Does it help you get closer to God or not? But does it help you to open up in terms of expanding your mind, expanding the way that you think about things, all that sort of stuff? It's really helpful.
So I think putting video games in this is like you're saying, it's very helpful, and there is a lot to talk about with discernment and choosing what's good for you. And I think a lot of people rely a bit too much on black and white. They want things to be, do I keep it or do I reject it? Because it's almost like a subconscious. You don't want to have to make a decision on it yourself. You want to just be able to, okay, pastor, tell me, do I get rid of this? Is this good or is this bad? So keeping it in this category means, okay, let's actually think and dialogue about it.
The argument that I often heard growing up was the whole one bad apple argument. You know, if you have a whole barrel full of, or you have an apple pie, and you have one bad apple, it's going to ruin the whole thing, which often then gets related to media.
Right.
It's like, if you have a movie which has great morals throughout the whole thing, but then one time, one character swears, is it all good? Or is it completely ruined? You know, like that's the argument.
That voice, man, cinematic.
In a world.
Even I've heard a lot. How many drops of poison does it take to? Does it take to poison a glass of water? You know, like if you have a glass of water and I put one drop of poison in, I'm like, I don't know if it's necessarily like I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily what we see in scripture.
In a church, like this is just a little bit, on a different topic. No, it's still on the same topic, but it's a little bit aside. Once for a church activity with teenagers, we got a sheet. This is what you do. This is the moral lesson. We actually baked a cake, and we baked 2 cakes.
Yep.
One of the cakes, we put dirt in it, in the batter. Like we literally put dirt in the batter, and we mixed it up, and we actually baked this cake with dirt in it. And we served the 2 pieces of cake to to different people. And there were these kids who were like, this does not taste right. What? And then we didn't tell them. We didn't tell them that we put dirt in it until the very end. And then we were like, ha! We put dirt in some of the cake, but not in the other one. Which would you prefer? And they were like, clearly the cake without dirt. And we were like, haha, live your life like that. Or something. There was a moral lesson in there. It was this whole... It was so stupid thinking back on it. I was like, I'm cringing so hard just thinking about I actually did that.
You could relate that to life lessons about showering.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Shower so you won't be full of dirt. So I suppose I don't know. We have to be realistic and say there are definitely bad sides.
Yeah.
To gaming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One I think I'd like to talk about, and some of you might have heard me talk about this before if you've, heard me preach a lot. But I actually had a big history with a particular video game, World of Warcraft. You may have heard of it. Where I faced a lot of addiction with this. And it was pretty common back then. And I definitely wasn't the worst of the people, this is back when it first came out.
When World of Warcraft first came out, people would literally refer to it as World of Warcrack, because it was like crack.
Yeah, fully.
Super addictive.
And I think back then I remember because my parents worked a lot, so they weren't home. So it was honestly just me at home a lot, and so I just ended up just playing because I had nothing else to do. I didn't do my schoolwork or anything in high school. And this is a big game. When I was playing, there was 12 million people online.
Yeah.
12 million. So it's huge. And me and a lot of my friends, it was kind of, you get home from school, you play and you play and you play and you play until midnight or something. And then what I'd often do is get up early and play before school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then some of my friends would even, you go to school, and then they'd wag class and go down to the local internet cafe and they'd play all day.
That's insane.
Yeah, I couldn't really get away with that because we didn't really have a close internet cafe. So then, I did wag school a few times to play. But yeah, and then, you get home and just repeat it. And so it was kind of that every night. And on weekends, It was just, you don't stop. And honestly, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so fun at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm looking back and I'm like, man.
Did you love it? Did you love it and hate it, or did you just love it? Like back
At the
then?
time, I think I just loved it.
Yeah.
There was no side of me said this was bad.
Right.
And I think a lot of it came down to the fact that I was bullied a lot.
Okay.
Before I went to that school that I was at when I was playing. And I just struggled to make friends.
So for you, it was because the great thing about WoW is that you met a lot of people in there as well.
Yeah. But the people you'd meet on there, it wasn't just like teenagers.
Yeah.
I would meet, you'd be in the middle of a dungeon or something or doing, doing some sort of campaign or questing, and you party up with people and you meet these random people. I loved meeting all these people online.
Were you in like a guild?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Big one. And I remember even the people in the guild, they were hilarious. But like some of the people you meet just randomly, like, oh, I've got to kill 50 boars or whatever in this desert, and so you see someone else out there killing boars and you're like, hey, you want to team up so we can get this done faster? So you team up and you start talking. And all of a sudden, I just remember like playing, and then all of a sudden this... I found out it was a girl, and I was like, oh, yeah, cool. And then we're just talking, and then she's like, oh, hang on, just got to take a break, got to feed the baby. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then we finish, and then she's like, oh, okay, like, what? And I'm just like, hey, just out of curiosity, how old are you? She's like, oh, I'm 42. And I'm like,
Jeepers.
42-year-old single mum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she goes to work, hangs out with the baby, plays WoW. That's her life.
Yeah.
And I mean, another guy, he was retired playing WoW. 60-something. 12-year-olds playing, just everyone you can imagine. Like it was just the most eclectic group of people.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think what people loved about it is you felt like you could just be whoever you wanted to be on there.
Yes.
And, whenever I've told people that, like often older generations are just like, no, they were lying about their age. I'm like, no, trust me, that's what the statistics were. It was this huge collection of, obviously a lot of young people.
Which is an insane achievement, though, for a video game. Having such a wide appeal. And of course, that's why it was so popular, because it had such a wide appeal.
Yeah. But the reality is, I knew for myself, I just totally invested into it, and I had nothing else. I wasn't wanting to make friends at school anymore.
Yeah, that
I had a friend at school who started playing it when he found out, but then I didn't even really care about hanging out with him. Like, I just wanted to play the game.
Yeah.
So I can't even pretend I was doing it to make a better friend. Like, it was... and it wasn't until... Because you had to pay to subscribe to play... It wasn't until my family basically went through a big financial crisis and we couldn't afford the game because you had to pay every month to play. We couldn't even afford that. And I remember just my whole reality just like shattering because I didn't have this one thing that was me anymore. And I kind of realized how finite it was. And it was a big moment for me. But the reality is video games can be addicting.
Absolutely.
And, you don't even realize how massively you're sucked in.
I had a similar story. I played RuneScape, which is the sort of plebby
poor man's WoW.
It is the poor man's WoW. I think WoW's monthly subscription cost was like $20,
Yeah, something like that.
Whereas RuneScape was like $10, and it was free to play as well. So you didn't have to buy a physical copy. So that's how I got into RuneScape.
Right.
But it was the same sort of thing. Also, probably a little bit more hardcore, just because it had a insane skill system that you get to like level 97 on a skill and you're like halfway to the experience needed to get to level 99 or something like that. The way that the experience just stacks up.
Yeah.
But honestly, probably not as much as you, Josh.
Yeah.
I've put many hours into other games. Like Oblivion, I think, was probably one of the biggest games. The Elder Scrolls 4 and then the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, that was huge.
Oh, yep.
Which is really unfortunate because it was like around the time that I was doing uni.
Oh, right.
So it was like the worst time to be an addict for Skyrim, but it was good times.
I just could not fit in the time at uni to play. I had it, but it's, I borrowed it off a friend, I think. But that's the reality, and you can get really sucked into these things, and it can help for a while, but ultimately it's not really solving some of the problems you experience in real life. For me, it didn't really solve my social issues. It didn't really solve my self-esteem things. It was kind of like a temporary, fix.
When I went to college for the first time, I went there as a ex-homeschooled kid, so not super duper well socially adjusted, as you might imagine, and really shy, like really not an outgoing sort of person, quite an introvert. And so for the first couple of weeks, I remember I would go to classes and I would go to lunch, dinner, and the cafeteria. And then I would just play video games because I was super shy and I didn't really want to be around people because I was like, this is a whole scary thing. Heaps of people that I didn't know. And it took a little while until I made some friends, and then I kind of stopped playing video games as much, which was great for me because then it meant that I got to become a more socially adjusted person. So I just thank God that I was able to actually break out of that, because looking back, there was a guy down my hallway who Josh might remember as well, who was like I guess sort of like one of those people that just live at college forever, and he would live there during the holidays, and we would go into his room and he had like the meanest PC setup ever, but he would just like sit in there and play video games all day, and he was quite a large guy, but since then he's actually gone to the gym heaps, and now he's like super thin, like so there is hope for everybody.
And that's the thing, when I stopped playing was when I really actually started taking my faith seriously.
Right.
And that's when I really discovered my passion for music as well. So I realized I had more going for me once I stopped playing World of Warcraft, specifically that game, because it just takes so long to play that game. You can't play it nowadays I think it's a bit different. I don't know. It's a really different game now than what it was back then. But back then you had to play for hours and hours and hours every day to do anything. Everything took ages. Now I think you can sit down and play for half an hour and stop if you want. But
still the appeal would be the same, like the addicting appeal. Like,
I'm sure,
you could sit down for half an hour, but it would be better to play an hour, and then it would be better to play for 2 hours, and so on and so forth forever.
Yeah. Like you legit just couldn't get, like, now I think I remember they added lots of quality of life features in as I played to make things faster.
Yeah.
Like
fast tracking your character to level 100 or whatever.
Oh, that was way later. Yeah, you couldn't do that at the beginning. Okay. There was no such thing as buying your way to the top.
Yeah.
But things like, if you wanted to do here's one small example. If you wanted to do a dungeon, so it's like this big system of things you go. Most of them took about 2 hours to do, maybe an hour. You all had to walk to that dungeon. You had to all to the location, which could take 20 minutes just in itself, just getting there. Then you had to get your party all together. You had to find people, type in these big public chats, like, hey, anybody want to do this? If you didn't have any friends online, and hope people would say yes. Hope it makes a good team, and then go in and then do it. And then if you die in the dungeon, you have to go back, walk all the way back there, find your body or whatever. And it was just...
Because were there no spawn points inside the dungeon? Like if you died, like you had to go to the nearest graveyard or whatever, hey?
Yeah, and then you had to walk back as a spirit or whatever. It was kind of weird.
Stupid.
Nowadays you can, there's Dungeon Finder and a way to instantly teleport to that dungeon. So you don't even have to go. I think they added that in just when I was, when I sort of finished. But that alone shaves just an hour off doing that, So they had a lot of things in, but back then you just had to put in lots of time. It's different now.
So look, the point is we are obviously biased with video game players, but we aren't blind to the
problems. Yeah.
They can be isolating. They can be highly addicting.
And also let's talk, last problem, the content of them can be pretty terrible.
For sure.
Exhibit A, probably GTA, Grand Theft Auto.
Yep.
Always makes the news. Always up there, because in that game it's just straight up a game of how much illegal things can you do. Shoot people on the streets.
The game is literally called Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I've played them and they're very well built games, but I could never get past my conscience playing it. I was like, I feel bad, even though they're just pixels or whatever. I'm like, I feel bad playing it.
But I mean, you and I have both done things in video games that we would obviously never do in real life. Obviously. Well,
kill 100 boars in a forest. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. But I absolutely get what you mean.
Yeah, because that one is, I think it's different, because it's presented in modern reality, it's made to look like today.
But let's be real. So we've talked about receive, reject, and redeem.
Yep.
And we can agree probably that the majority of video games fit within the redeem category.
Yep.
But there, of course, are a lot of video games that do fit in that reject category. And, I've played video games for a little bit and just felt uneasy playing them.
Yep.
And I haven't been able to finish them just because I just couldn't do it.
Yep.
So and again, that wasn't a process of me chucking that video game or that genre or whatever into the bucket and going, I'm not going to play any of these ever.
Yep.
It is a process of me investigating for myself, deciding for myself what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
That is discernment. And sometimes you have to sample things in order to actually decide for yourself. And I'm not going to judge somebody else if they want to play X video game that is, for me, too violent, too sexually explicit, too crude, too whatever.
Even like demonic, there are a lot of games that are just totally, like literally demon focused.
Sure.
And I can't do it. Like personally.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are games that I've played that Josh probably wouldn't ever play, and there are games that I've played that I enjoyed, but there are also elements to that game. If I could go back and not play it, I would probably go, it probably didn't add that much to my life. It didn't add much value, like good stuff to my life, which is one of the reasons why mostly I just avoid horror video games now. Yeah, because I've played one or two, and I might have enjoyed part of them, but also they probably, scared the living daylights out of me.
Yep. And that's the thing. I think that's the hardest part. If you find a game that you like and you have to force yourself to stop playing it.
Yeah.
So I got into a situation recently where it was possible for me to play World of Warcraft again, and I wanted to, but I had to make a decision to say no and and that's really hard. That can be really hard when you find anything you enjoy and you kind of feel that you shouldn't. Oh man.
And one of the big things that Josh and I have actually bonded over in the past was a game called Hearthstone, which is also based on the Warcraft universe.
Yeah, funnily enough.
Awesome card games. So I love card games. Like Josh isn't as much into card games. You've played a number of
I
card
like
games.
them. I'm just not. Yeah, they're not my number one.
They're sort of, for me, is probably one of the closest to number one because I love board games, physical board games, paper and cardboard, but I also love digital card games. And Hearthstone for Josh because it was based on this awesome universe that he loves, and then also for me because I'm like so into card games, it was something that we really bonded over.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it is a huge time sink as well.
Enormous.
It has daily quests. So for those of you who don't know, you complete a task, you get some in-game currency.
And if you don't do it daily, you don't get the reward. Like
Exactly.
it only stacks up 3 days.
It refreshes every single day. You can replace one every single day, and you have to keep doing it. Otherwise, you're not losing money, but you're not getting money, which makes you feel like you're losing money.
And then it makes you feel like you have to put down real money to catch up.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I've spent more money on Hearthstone than I would be comfortable to talk about, really. Like, okay, I'm comfortable to talk about.
You don't have to say it.
I've probably spent close to $300 or $400 on Hearthstone.
Wow.
If not a little bit more. Maybe. I honestly don't really know.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. It's more than any one person should spend on a game.
But realistically, there are people who've spent way more than that.
Oh, absolutely. The whole collectible card game industry. I read an article on this a while back. Is actually propped up by what they call whales. So people who will spend thousands of dollars, if not more, on card games. Whether you want a fully golden collection, so you get premium versus standard cards, the same card. It's exactly the same card, but it's like a premium version, whether the artwork is animated or it's got like a golden ring around it or something.
They look so pretty.
They look beautiful.
Yep.
They just look great. And then like if you get like a fully golden deck, you get like a nice little bonus, like your coin is like you have like this card called the coin. For those to go second, if you have a fully golden deck, your coin will be golden.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't know that at the time.
So the whole industry is actually propped up by, so there'll be most players which will maybe spend $20-$30, play for a little while and then give up on it. And then there's the few whales who will spend so much money on it.
I just have this like picture whenever you say Wales, it's just like, buy cards now. Play with me. I think I spent $3.25
That's insane.
It was, and it was a one-off. Like, I just want to do this thing, and it wasn't even a good use of the money.
I remember being so frustrated at Josh because
Ages ago.
I'd be like, just spend $5 on like this special holiday bundle, and he'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it, and I'd be like, just do it, man.
When stinginess wins.
And looking back, I'm like, I would much rather be in Josh's position because I would have so much more money.
I actually loved the challenge of playing it for free because it was so hard.
Yeah, it's like a game in and of itself.
Yep. So something interesting I read, because, doing a bit of research, I actually read this really interesting article called People of the Game, Jewish Heritage and Gaming. And this for me was when I really started to see like, maybe gaming is almost like an underutilized. Anyway, I'll read for you guys just a little bit of it. I'll do a summary, and we'll put this in our notes, because this is a really great article. I would highly recommend reading it, and it's really short too. But basically, it's this guy, surname of Gottlieb. I love it. But he talks about there are 3 kinds of Jewish play in long-standing Jewish tradition. He talks about simulation and ritual, which is think about, like, he talks about Jewish holidays being like a simulation. And so, like, Passover, he said, is like a reenactment or a role play of the liberation of Jewish people from their slavery and their exodus in Egypt. So he talks about that as like a simulation, just like video games, or like Star Wars Battlefront 2, the old one. It's just like the simulations. There's a little meme for you guys. And then he also talks about Hevruta, which is studying Jewish texts in pairs. So this is almost like playing a game, but with the Old Testament texts. So I love this. He talks about, sorry. Hevruta, the method of studying Jewish texts in pairs. It's a game within a game, pushing and pulling and trying to gain greater understanding. So people talk about text, argue, and struggle to find the greater meaning of that text. And they talk about that being like a game. Then the other one, is a wordplay in Jewish tradition. And this is the one that's playing a game with the text. And this was amazing because basically the Hebrew letters, which basically make up the word Senna, which means bush in reference to the burning bush in Exodus. If you slightly rearrange them a little bit, the Hebrew version of them, it makes Sinai. And it's this beautiful wordplay that you can't get to Sinai unless you go to the burning bush first. Wow. Sinai makes no sense without the burning bush. And you only really discover that when you do the play on words. So this gaming idea. And so this guy has made these video games, and you'll see this in the article. One's called Lost and Found, and it's all about using video games to teach Jewish tradition, to teach the law.
That's so fascinating. I wish I paid attention in Hebrew class during my degree.
The best use of our Hebrew books is actually coming in right now when we're using them to prop up these microphones.
Oh, it's so sad.
It is. I wasn't good at Hebrew. I was better at Greek. I was not good at Hebrew. It just did not come naturally.
But it's such a fascinating idea. And it makes me wish that I understood Hebrew culture a bit more. Just the idea of storytelling. Because, I mean, that's such a huge part of Hebrew culture is telling stories. And
it's massive.
The idea as well of time, time as well as simulation. The idea that, like, that's why the Jewish Sabbath is so profound, because it's like redeeming time, and redeeming culture and heritage. And you guys definitely should check out the rest of this article. It's really fascinating.
Beautiful. And the reality is, I think what they're getting at is that video games are actually a form of teaching. Like you said, storytelling.
Right.
But also there's a lot of cases of people getting out of depression with video games.
Yes.
Particularly complicated video games, aka like Dark Souls. Have you ever played that?
Yeah. And there's
I've
also...
never played it, I don't know. But
I've never played it either. I've seen videos on it. But there is a great video that we've both watched on how Dark Souls helped somebody get out of depression, which we may link as well, which is really good.
And the bottom line of that video is that Dark Souls and other video games taught this guy that if there's a problem, because Dark Souls is basically known as one of the hardest video games out at the moment.
I believe the first one, there was like the definitive director's cut was called the Prepare to Die edition or whatever. So yeah,
Because you just basically fail over and over again, and you have to learn from your mistakes and master everything.
yeah. So it taught this guy about problem solving, right?
Yes, and basically, if there's a problem, even if you fail, you can keep pushing and you can overcome it, which is something I think all video games teach that in a different way.
Yeah.
Some teach it better than others. Some teach it in different methods. Something like Hearthstone, for example, really taught a lot about using the resources that you have. As someone who played for free, I didn't have as many cards as Jesse had, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I had to be really resourceful with what I had and constantly try and think through. I couldn't just copy what I saw online or other people do. I had to be like, okay, I don't have that. What can I replace that with to make it work?
Thinking about this as an analogy for life and for analogy for living your life is so helpful to me and to so many other people as well. And that's, one of the big things. So that really leads us quite neatly into sort of the last area. We've gone in all sorts of different directions with this idea, but I'd like for us just to think about what do video games add in terms of adding value to you? Maybe if you aren't a video game player, why should you care? And why should maybe you check out a video game? Maybe, know? And if you are a video game player, how can you think about video games as being a higher level of media consumption rather than just entertainment?
Yeah.
So there's just a couple things that I think that probably that jump out initially. Number one, video games are a medium of storytelling. Whether you like it or not, they are a medium by which you tell stories.
In a way that no other medium can really do. It's totally interactive storytelling.
Yeah. Which is really interesting. And I mean, of course, there are some really bad video game stories. There are some really bad movies. There are some really bad books. But yeah, what you said is so important because they are the only medium of storytelling where you are literally put in the role of a character.
Yep.
If you were to contrast two games like Skyrim, really popular game, probably one of the most popular games of the last decade, maybe the most popular game of the past decade. If you
GTA 5,
probably, but it'd be up there.
It's up there.
It would definitely be in the top 3 or 5.
Yep.
It puts you in the role of the Dragonborn, but it leaves a lot of choices up to you, the player, of how you want to build your character, who you want to be, what choices do you want to make. Yeah. There are certain other games, like for instance, one that I'm a big fan of is the Witcher series, which is based on a series of Polish novels.
Wow.
Puts you in the role of Geralt of Rivia. You're not given any choices as to who your character is, what his background is, what race he is. But it does put you in the role of the character. And it allows you to navigate this world as a character, meeting other people who react to you as Geralt.
Yep.
And it in the way of storytelling, it tells a story in some ways, I think, way more effectively than a movie or a TV show would. Interestingly enough, though, The Witcher is being made into a Netflix series.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
We don't know much about it at this stage. We don't even know who's being cast yet, but it will be a Netflix series. So, look, cross your fingers. A lot of video game to film or TV adaptations are pretty terrible, but I'm hoping that this one is going to be good.
Yeah,
I'm hoping.
Look, don't get your hopes up, to be honest.
It's a wildly popular series, so if it's terrible, then it's not going to be good for the creators.
Netflix does a good job generally. I mean, that's really cool that like Witcher, I mean, it sounds, I think the title probably makes it sound worse than what it is. I don't really know much about the games.
Witcher is just a literal translation for Monster Hunter.
Oh.
So that it's Polish, so the translation doesn't always work well.
Yep.
So, but that's basically what Witcher means. It doesn't mean, it grammatically and also thematically, it's bizarre, but that's what it means.
Yeah, wow. And I think for me, I've always been a big fan of the Legend of Zelda series.
Yeah.
And this recent one was massive in terms of, overhaul. Like it's a totally different game. It doesn't even feel like it, but it's just got all the same characters. It's amazing. But for me, I've loved Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild because of multiple reasons. I mean, it's a great downtime for me, which video games can be. Like I struggle to switch off a lot. Even if I watch a TV show, sometimes I can struggle to switch off just because, as a pastor, you're thinking about people and problem all the time. So sometimes I need something like that to just help me just disengage, because it really puts all my focus in it. But also, I think there's not really much story. There's not really much story in most Zelda games, because it's really straightforward. There's the evil guy, save the princess, destroy the villain.
It's very archetypal, hey?
Yes, yeah, and that's the beauty of it, because they've never really cared that much. I mean, some of them stand out with way more story, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But the latest one, very archetypal. I feel so clever using such a... But part of the reason I love it, I haven't even finished it yet. I'm still battling it, but when I get time, because it's a very big game. But part of it is you kind of capture these like shrines or whatever they call it, and it's basically you go into this thing, solve a puzzle, and then the shrine changes color. It goes from orange to blue, and then you can teleport between all the shrines, whatever. And there are also these big towers. But basically, what happens is over the course of the game, you notice that like the whole map at first was covered in these like shrines that have been sort of corrupted by the evil guy, and you're slowly taking them back, and it's all leading towards this big final battle. And I just I love it, because I was thinking about it, and some of you will probably find this absurdly cheesy, and I don't care.
Brace yourselves.
Yeah, so get ready. But like the reality is, I mean, we kind of talked about it before, that like we do believe in this thing called the spiritual battle.
Yeah.
And the reality of the kingdom of God. And that it's here on earth, but it's also something that's coming, and there is a big, great final battle coming. And as I'm playing this game, you can look at the map and you get this big overview picture of all the shrines you've taken back, and you can see the map of this massive land slowly turning blue, which is like a representation of it's gone back to its original purpose. And for me, I love that, because I actually, like, I'm not just saying I think about this, I've actually thought about it legitimately as I'm playing the game. I'm like, it's so much like I'm working for the kingdom of God, and I'm, putting myself in the front line, and we're working, and we're seeing things change, and we're seeing the kingdom of God spread. And that's like that with so many games with, a sword and they're slaying a dragon and all that stuff. There's so many biblical pictures you can think of,
Absolutely.
Revelation with the dragon being slain and the kingdom of God. And it's just, to miss that is, I think, really sad. But like when I can see it in a game like Breath of the Wild, it's just like, wow. It's like, I feel like it's like, this is kind of it's a little picture of what the big picture is for me. Obviously, it's a very small picture. Big game, little picture.
It's a fantasy themed reenactment or callback to the bigger story that's happening all around us.
Yeah, and
that's what makes it an archetype.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think they definitely didn't intend that.
No. But I think
what I'm getting.
I think that's something that's deeply ingrained in the human psyche. You look at stories like St. George and the Dragon, the Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. They're all about good guy versus bad guy. There's elements of the nobody becoming somebody.
Yep.
The working hard and training to orient and align yourself to a higher goal, a higher good. Luke Skywalker isn't just fighting against the Empire so that he can have a better day. He's fighting against the Empire so that he can defeat tyranny, and so that he can experience hope and freedom and the restoration of that which is good and wholesome and right and true. And that's the same. That's the same with every story. It's heroism. It's sacrifice. It's pitting yourself and you as a person against the forces of darkness for the sake of a higher goal, a higher good, which is just, I mean, it's the Jesus story. It's the story of the God who loved the world so much that he sent his only son so that those who believe would have eternal life.
Yeah.
And the restoration of the world, the redeeming of the world back to him.
Yeah, and to feel like you can do something that participates in that or reminds you of it is a beautiful thing. And that's the reality. Like, there is this beauty, even in places that maybe the church has historically cast aside.
Yeah.
But really, it's like you can learn even from these obscure things.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus would often use, like, he'd teach lessons from really obscure, like, look at this fig tree. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing, you can learn almost anywhere.
And the reason why Jesus's parables were so impactful wasn't because Jesus said them, even though, of course, Jesus did say them and they're super impactful.
Yep.
But the reason that they impacted with the people who he told them to was because he was using language and he was using culture and he was using things that people understood. So in some ways, video games are kind of like, I guess material, a blank canvas for bringing meaning to the world, bringing meaning to people. I don't know. Yeah, that's not a fully developed idea in my head, but I think it's moving towards something.
And that's something I would love to see more of. People who are actively teaching great values through video games.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like people who are like they feel that their calling on earth is to design video games that really teach people.
Yeah.
That really engage in a way that nothing else can. Because that's what storywriters do. That's what songwriters do. That's what
Yeah.
like filmmakers. They're teaching things.
Yeah.
But it's almost like rather than going through the front door and just saying this is how it is, it's kind of going through the window. Sneaking in and teaching, and that's what I'd love to see more of. And I suppose there is also an element of, I like video games just generally being a great social activity.
Yep.
I have numerous memories. And again, I brought them up last year, the boys of 589, but some of the boys just getting together and playing Age of Empires 2 together, having these massive battles that went till 3 a.m. For us was an amazing bonding experience that we still joke over today.
Yep.
Do you know, from years ago?
Same, exact same. Some of the best memories that I have with my friends are playing Age of Empires, playing the gun game in Call of Duty, where you all start like with like a knife or something like that, and then you end up leveling up and getting better guns as you go along. Okay. It's really fun and really casual as well.
Right. I've never played. Not really into Call of Duty games. I've played a couple of times, but I don't really know. But that sounds kind of fun.
I remember when I played a game called Destiny a few years ago now on the Xbox.
Did you find your destiny?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
And Destiny is kind of like Call of Duty meshed with World of Warcraft.
Okay.
So it has raids and dungeons and stuff like that. And I ended up playing with this brickie from South Australia. Wow. And just randomly, because we were in some Australian clan and we used to play games together all the time. Complete bogan. Great guy. Yeah. Complete bogan, swear his head off, all that sort of stuff. And then one day he asked me what I did for a living as we were just chatting. I was like, oh, I'm a pastor. And then he was like, oh, crap, I've been swearing. Wow. And I was like, it's all good, mate. It's all good. But then, it led to conversations about faith and why I'm a pastor, why I'm a Christian.
Really?
And I got to share a little bit about my faith. And it was weird shooting aliens, talking about Jesus. It was weird, but awesome all at the same time. I really treasured that more than Destiny because, to be honest, it wasn't the best game. It got really good, but it was a frustrating game to play. But I remember more about the people that I met along the way than the actual game itself.
Wow. So I suppose what we're getting at here is that there are pros and there are cons.
Yeah.
One little note to parents and even spouses. It is important. I mean, if you're a parent and your kids want to play video games, that's your call, whether you say yes or no to that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're the parent. You make that decision.
But it is important if they do play. It's really important to have conversations about what they play and how much they play. That's one thing I wish, if I had that maybe growing up a little bit more. And I'm not having to go at my parents. Like, I definitely not. They were busy working. I did it really in the sly. Like, they probably didn't realize it until way later.
Yeah.
But, like thinking about just having conversations with your kids about, okay, how much are we playing this? And even what games you're playing. That's one thing I was always good with my mum, having good chats about, okay, what game? I don't want to play this game because it's got this, and that sort of thing. I think it's really important. And even spouses having conversations about how much time, like if say ladies, you're dating or married to a gamer, or guys, you could be, or both of you play games. That's more and more common.
Like I'll use a good example of that. I've been married for about under 2 years now.
What a veteran.
Yeah, I know, right? I know everything about there is to marriage. No. In my first year of marriage, my wife she had a bit of a rude shock because she knew that I was a gamer and she knew, who I was. But I think she underestimated the extent to which I enjoyed this hobby. Right. Among other things, of course. But you know what they say, the first year of marriage is often the most difficult year of marriage, and it kind of can make or break a certain relationship. There was some pretty serious stuff that we had to talk through as far as my media consumption, and not just gaming, but just general media consumption as well. But gaming was a big part of it. We had to have some really honest conversations, which were really honestly pretty tough for me.
Yep.
Because nobody likes to look in the mirror and see the ugliness that's there, right? We'd much rather avoid it. I did, but I was forced to through therapy, honestly, and some really tough conversations with my wife about the extent to which I was playing video games, the type of video games I was playing, the type of video games I should play and I shouldn't play. And we actually worked through some of those decisions together as a couple.
Yep.
And it was really helpful. And I honestly think if we weren't able to have those conversations, it would have really negatively impacted our marriage. So, look, fellas, let me just say this. If you are a bloke and you are either married or dating a girl, or even if you're a girl, and you like a BL video game, it will have to come up at some point.
Yeah. Even if it's games like Candy Crush on your phone or whatever the latest thing is. This can come into any category. Because, I've seen before even couples where, the guy plays Call of Duty or whatever and the girl just plays Candy Crush all day and then she gets mad at him for playing video games. But she's playing probably just as much as he is, know? So it's something you got to really think about.
For us, it was never a question of what games we're playing. It was more the question of balancing the amount of time spent.
Yep.
Because, for me, growing up, I would work or do schoolwork or whatever, and then my downtime was either reading a book, going out with friends, or playing a video game, watching a movie.
Yeah.
When you get married, suddenly it's like, well, no, you actually have to spend time in, this relationship, actually getting to know the other person, spending time with them, that sort of stuff. You can't just do what you did before. And that's probably one of the biggest problems that we had is I wanted to just do what I did before when I wasn't married. And that did not work. And for those of you who are thinking about getting married, be aware that you're not going to be able to just continue living your life the way that you've been living it. Things will have to change.
Yeah, it does change. And it's awesome. To be honest, I love married life. But yeah, some changes I had to make as well.
Yeah.
Specific games I had to stop, types of games I had to stop playing.
Yeah.
Games that I couldn't pause, for example.
Exactly.
Like online games, they just don't work anymore in my life. It just doesn't. I've tried. Every time I try, it just goes terribly.
I have one online game that I still play, but I would not be able to play Overwatch or any of those other games where you literally have to be engaged all the time. There are certain online games like card games which you can kind of disengage from slightly and then return to them.
Yep.
But there is such thing as turn timers, so you have to really be aware of that.
Yeah. So I suppose that's us. Just some thoughts to think through. Maybe not the conclusion you wanted.
Maybe not. I think it's really important that, I guess at the end of the day, with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, you just can't stick things in a category and leave it there.
Yeah.
You just can't. You have to think it through. You have to use your brain. You can't just go up to your pastor and say, tell me what to do. Or you can't just, talk to your village elder or whoever it is that you want to talk to and ask them to tell you what to do. You have to think about it for yourself.
Yeah.
Really do it.
Even your type of personality. If you have an addictive personality,
Yep.
probably don't go to video games, really. Maybe find other things to do.
And even pick what video games you want to play. Like Josh and I, we both have a proclivity towards addictiveness. Josh has illustrated that. I've illustrated that. The sort of games that we have to play to stay sane and to also enjoy this hobby that we do feel that adds value to our life. We have to be discerning and we have to be honest and we actually have to, I think that's sort of the big thing for me.
Yeah, and you really do have to evaluate your time. Are video games the greatest use of time?
Yeah. Not always.
Not always.
Not always.
You know, some people, you just cannot fit video games if you want the kind of life you're going for.
That's right. And the reality is Josh is a musician. I like to do filmmaking. I also like to write. There are times where I have to literally say to myself, no, do something productive.
Yep.
If you're playing video games all the time, I know for me, if I'm playing video games all the time in my off time, like I'm not even talking about like skipping work or skipping school.
Yeah.
Like you have to work, you have to go to school. There is then free time. Depending on how much free time you have is up to your lifestyle. But there are times where I have had to go, no, for my free time, I'm going to spend time with my wife, or I'm going to write, or I'm going to do some video editing work, something that is productive.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, I know for me, we're both creative people, but producing stuff is always more rewarding than consuming all the time.
Absolutely.
Whether you're just reading or watching TV, a movie, or playing video games. Consuming is great, but if you're just consuming all the time, then for me, I honestly just feel worthless sometimes. It's like, I know that I'm not worthless, but I feel worthless because it's like, well, what am I contributing to the world? You know, how am I moving myself forward into becoming the person that I want to be? And the reality is, if you get sucked into these modes of doing and being, then you can get that way. Yeah.
Great. So some thoughts. Let us know what you think. Message us on the Facebook page, write a review, whatever. Comment. You can just inbox us even. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Maybe we have it right. Maybe we have it totally wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe we missed something
love
completely.
to hear your feedback on this.
Everything. This is just a conversation and us just having a good old chat about it. So thanks so much for listening. Josh and Jesse out.